We got one more topic, and I think just enough time to cover it. So I wanted to ask you, do we move on to the next figure too quickly? I think this is something that maybe we all do to a degree, because there's always another one, right? There's always a new release. There's always a 2.0. There's always another figure on the docket where you're like, okay, I'm going to look at that one, and I just forget about the figure I just got that I put in one pose and then put it on the shelf and then forgot about it, right? So I kind of want to ask, and I want the chat to kind of weigh in on this too. How, do we move on to new figures too quickly? Do we get a figure and then kind of pose it and then forget about it? Does that happen with our collections? And Leo, I want to start with you again on this one. Do you think we all kind of are guilty of that from time to time?
Time to time, you might be, but if you pose figures, you may not be, because you're always going back thinking of new ideas. You're looking at your displays. You're always reposing. I do it like pretty much every week. I am always going back, reposing figures, making sure that, I capture certain things. Or if I think that, like I said, I've advanced more in posing, I'll say, let me just go back and do something totally different. So I'm always going back to revisit. But you'll have like your figures that, kind of take up more precedence. But I would honestly say you're on to something. Like I do think that, again, if you're somebody who, like for instance, Shane, he has it down to a science where he just collects certain figures in his collection. So that's why, like I said, he's more devoted on certain figures. So of course he would have more attention to, just those particular figures. For somebody like, or, like most of us who collect a lot of figures, or mainly me, and whoever else, again, you're going to have a lot in your display. But if you have companion pieces, and if you want to kind of recreate, if you're creating scenes, then of course you're going to have a lot of attention on your figures. But I think, I mean, it can go both ways, but I think you are right. I think basically, we have a tendency to get one and say, okay, cool, I got it. Let me pose it up. Okay, what's the next one? You know what I mean? What's the next one to drop? When's this going to come?
Exactly.
I want this to actually, I want to have that. You know what I mean? It is what it is. I mean, to say it's not true, you kind of be kind of naive. You know what I mean?
Right, exactly.
It happens. Like it is something that basically does happen. Like literally, bro, I have the DX19 in my collection right now. It's still in the box. And the reason why is because I don't have that Batman Begins yet. You know what I mean?
Right. I remember
I need
that,
that to kind of pull off what I'm trying to pull off. But I mean, again, like, again, I would say, yes, there is a tendency to move on too quick. But if you have a smaller collection, if you're more so narrow, you narrow your collection down to like maybe one IP and you're only focused on that, then it probably wouldn't be concerning. You know what I mean?
Right. And Leo, because I do think it is true, like you said, but the figure, that's how I know I'm really excited about a figure. Because if I get one and then I pose it up a little bit and I keep going back to my room and I'm like, hey, I want to go look at that figure again that I just got. I've been doing that with the Scorpion, right? That's how I know I really love the figure. And if I'm not doing that, then I'm just kind of like, do I really love this? But with Scorpion, it's different because I keep going back and I'm like, that figure's fucking dope, right? Like Sephiroth too, Cloud,
what
whatever.
I did was, for me, because like I said, I'm not selling figures off, I'm donating. So basically, there were certain figures that I had in my collection, and I'm like, I think I'm done with this right now. I think I'm over it. Normally sideshow figures. But what I do basically with those, like literally, I'm just being quite honest. Like Hot Toys, it's hard for me to get rid of. Sideshow, I can dip on that quick. But so what I'll do is, if the ones that I don't want and I know that I'm going to donate, I'll pack them up, get them ready, because I'm actually donating those to like a children's hospital. Nice. So yeah, it's easy for me to do something like that and just make space for more, you know what I mean, and other figures and stuff like that. So yeah, but I think you're onto something, bro. I think it is just like we have a tendency to like get a figure, pose it up, get in your collections, like, I'm done with that. Okay, what's next?
Right.
What's coming next?
Always a search of the next one. Yeah, but Dean, what do you think, bro? Do you think we tend to move on to new figures too quickly and forget about the ones we just got?
Yeah, I think it also might just depend on how much you love that figure or something. Like for me, I'll get a figure, pose it up, put it in my DTOF, and it's whatever. And then I'm like, all right, what do I have coming in next? So I definitely am guilty of that. But a figure like the Game Toys Cloud, I still haven't put that thing down.
See, Dean, I told you, bro. I told you, bro. I told you would love that.
Yeah, so I think it just kind of depends on the character, or maybe it's just a really fun figure to pose around that might hold your attention more. But I definitely am always, especially because we host shows and we got to talk about the newest stuff and what comes in, and then I mean, even on my show, the segment is new this week. It's like we already got new stuff. Like, what are we talking about? So, yeah, I think it could be a problem. I think we're just in maybe the position where we don't have time to appreciate the stuff we get.
Right.
Because it's like, okay, well, I gotta stay on top of it. So yeah, I definitely.
Okay. All right. Makes sense. Makes sense. Well, Carlos, what about you, bro? Do you feel like we all tend to do this? Do you tend to do this sometimes, get a figure and move on to the next one?
Yeah, so I think this was exactly why, and again, we're going to make a video, so it doesn't sound like we're just randomly.
There's going to be a
saying things,
PowerPoint, I will say. Yeah.
there will be a PowerPoint or video, but this is exactly why we're creating, tier-based collecting. Because I was the kind of person that I'll get one figure and onto the next and onto the next. I'll keep some figure in boxes, and once you start doing that, or you're like, well, maybe it's because you don't care about that character enough. That's exactly why that character probably wasn't important enough, right? Because if in this tier-based collecting, it is about keeping a smaller scale, or smaller figures, less figures, but it's not so much about just, well, you have less, so your collection is less valuable. It's, if anything, it's more important to you because you actually have the figures that you care about. Instead of having, like, an example I keep using would be like having a Kylo for me wouldn't be important, but a Kylo for you would be very important. For me, maybe having a sack isn't important enough, but for Dean, maybe it is. So that's one of those things that. So we move on because I think we're always on to the next, or on to the next thing they release, onto the next figure that's being hyped. And that's why we see so many people sell figures in a week or two, because they get something that we really didn't care about, and then we're moving on. And I think that's exactly why this tier-based collecting is really going to help a lot of people, because since I've done that, I don't even recall now the next one I'm even thinking about buying, because there's nothing out there that's important enough for me to even move on to. So I'm appreciating the work and the things that I have now, because I keep going back and looking at the same ones, because nothing is meeting that cut, right? That 50, 75 figure cut anymore. So
right,
I'm not worried about the next one. I keep appreciating what I have, because I don't care about if an armorized Deadpool, which you know that I've been talking about for a long time, but he won't make that top 50 or that top 40 or whatever it is. So because of that, I no longer experience this, and collecting has gotten a lot better for me. And you don't feel the need to like keep up or wait for the next thing the Hot Toys releases. You just move on with your life, and you start realizing that you do other things. So I think a lot of us do this. And I definitely would do this as well. So
yeah, I think it makes sense. Yeah, and I sometimes do it too. So, and that lets me know that I really don't care as much about that figure, and that's one of the ones I tend to move on from. So, it definitely is
like the comment here.
Yeah, which one?
It says I usually forget what I have quickly. Yeah, like that's why tier-based collecting will probably be best for you, because then you won't forget what you have, because it'd be really hard for you to, right? Or you're like, yo, it's just, so anyways.
Well, it's almost like, I think one of the coolest parts about collecting is like the hunt.
Right.
Like not having something. And then once you finally get it, it's like, oh, cool. But you still want that feeling, and it's just kind of like, well, I got the thing I really wanted, but now what? Like,
right.
It almost feels better wanting something than having it. Sometimes, not all the time.
Yeah, it can be like that with a lot of things, Dean. Collecting, relationships. Like, you kind of want what you can't have. I mean, that's
right.
This tends to be like a human thing, right? Like people will buy things they don't like. Like I've talked about that stealth suit cap. I'm willing to bet there's a lot of people who probably didn't really want that, right? But they bought it because it was $300. So. And there are people probably that pre-ordered the InArt Joker that didn't really want it because they thought it was more exclusive than it turned out to be. So I think that happened too. So
right. With tier-based, I don't think that you will ever get into, oh shit, I pre-ordered the wrong thing, or damn, I bought this and I really didn't want it. That won't happen anymore. It's impossible for it to happen, because we specifically made that so you no longer have that problem.
Yeah.
Right. So you'll never be like, oh, I'm going to pre-order something and I just felt like FOMO. Well, you won't feel FOMO, because there was no reason to feel FOMO, because he never even made the tier-based thing. So hopefully we make that video soon.
Absolutely, bro.